Consumer choice in mortgage markets, for me, refers to the very difficult journey that consumers have to go on in order to get the product they want. It's easy to think of disuse and being led astray by the sirens, and in a way we as economists might characterise the sirens as lemons, and the point of the consumer journey is to try to get to the place, the safe harbour, in which they can feast upon peaches. Consumer choice in the mortgage market is very important for the FCA, partly because it regulates mortgages, but also because mortgages tend to be the largest financial transaction that consumers ever undertake. And therefore, if the market is working well in mortgages, and that's our statutory objective, it's really great news for us. I mean, if it is, the FCA doesn't have to do anything. If it isn't, then clearly we have to consider whether we can do something useful. The preliminary evidence we have is that it's possible that the market is not working well, which then, of course, raises the question of, well, what do we do about it? How can we indeed confirm that there really is a problem? Because if we're not sure that there's a problem, it tends to make sense not to intervene, because intervention is usually costly and you want to be pretty confident that there's a problem such that benefits will arise from doing something. So one thing we might consider is the use of randomised control trials to see whether there is a serious problem. Of course, there's a challenge in that, which is whether we can design trials that will tell us what will actually happen in real-world markets over time as firms respond to our intervention. And then the other question, of course, raised by this is, what should the nature of the intervention be? In the past, there's been quite a few interventions which are essentially disclosures. More recently, perhaps you could say that there have been some nudges. And people tend to disparage the results of those. But I should say that, for example, the 2004 UK mortgage regime, which involved quite a few disclosures, was based on fairly extensive consumer testing. It wasn't as if we didn't know what the consumers could understand and what they preferred. And yet people would say that that regime was not hugely successful. Overall, I think the track record to date says that we should be cautious about introducing further disclosures or possibly nudges, because it's not clear to us that the demand side really can be empowered to discipline the supply side. And if we were to take that view, then we would be forced to the conclusion that remedies which mimic the outcomes of effective competition, such as perhaps product standards, might be the way to go. And there is some precedent for that in the form of the very interesting so-called CAT standards, Consumer Access Terms, that Gordon Brown introduced for investment products in 1998. A difficulty with determining remedies for the mortgage market in the UK is that on the one hand we want to maintain the process of competition with all the benefits that dynamically delivers. And on the other hand, we have some evidence that disclosures and even behaviourally informed disclosures don't work hugely well. There have been some behavioural interventions, especially in the United States, which have worked very well, but they tend to be in the nature of government legislation, for example, obliging people to save and ratcheting up the amounts that people are obliged to save. And those have been very impactful, but of course they're not the kinds of things that a non-governmental regulator can do.